for all the latest community news and events.
103.2 Preston FM.
Your community, your radio.
And you're with Chat City, Preston FM 103.2 on this Thursday morning. LGBT History Month, the nationwide celebration of the heritage of LGBT communities, past and present, which take place throughout the whole of February, reaches its eighth year in 2014. And to talk a little about that, I'm pleased to welcome into the studio this morning Vicci McCann. And Vicci is from the Lancashire Archives here in Preston. So Vicci, nice to meet you again. A very good morning.
Good morning.
And just before we talk about that for our listeners, tell us a little about, I'm sure you could take hours, but tell us a little about Lancashire Archive here in Preston.
Well, Lancashire Archives is basically the place where we keep the historic records for the whole of Lancashire. So it's not just Preston, it's across the county. And we have records going back 900 years. And when we've sort of worked out how many records we've got, if you put our shelving end to end, it reaches about 9 miles. So you can imagine just how vast the records are. We're housed in a purpose-built building, which some of you may have seen down on Bow Lane. It's an odd 70s building, which looks like it's on stilts.
That's right.
Iconic 1970s design.
Yeah.
Or a hideous carbuncle, depending on your point of view.
That's right, like the bus station. Yes.
But yes, we're a free service, and basically most people come to us doing their family history, sometimes local history, and we get a lot of academics, but we also get people for all sorts of reasons coming in to have a look at the historic records. And
I know on the 2 or 3 times that we previously met, we've had some fascinating conversations about the archives and the people who make contact with you. And I can't remember, is it right that you're presently trying to put everything onto line or on the web?
We have a few resources online. We have some of our parish registers are available on Ancestry, and we have our catalogues, which are basically descriptions of the documents we have, are available on our website through our online catalogue. And we do try and put records on, but as I've said, the collections are so vast that really, it would take too long. The resources aren't there really to put everything online. And we always say there's nothing quite like interacting with the original document when you sit there and there's something that's hundreds of years old that survived, and perhaps your ancestors' names on there, and it's a real sort of buzz for people.
Yeah, I can understand that. So when it comes to LGBT history, and for people who are not too sure, it's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender history, isn't it? What then would be found within the archives here in Preston?
Well, this is part of the reason we've got involved in this, is because actually there isn't a huge amount, and we've found that this is a real gap in our collections. And one of the things we're trying to do is sort of represent Lancashire in its whole and all the communities. And sometimes there are gaps, usually because, so, for example, with homosexuality in the past it was illegal, so it was quite secret and hidden. So you don't always get the records appearing that you would like. So what we're trying to do is take these hidden histories and bring them out. And we're also calling, out to people now and LGBT organisations to deposit their records with us if they're from Lancashire. And through this process, which was started by my colleague Catherine Rook, we've since collected what we call our pink archive. So we are getting some records in, which is absolutely fantastic. So we are hopefully bridging that gap.
So to date, most of the stuff really, I take it, is from things that were recorded in local newspapers, etc., and go back that kind of way, do they? From people who were charged when it was illegal with offences that appeared in the... Do you know what the earliest date is that we have a record of anyone being charged with an offence of any kind?
I don't, but we do have, excuse me, in the calendars of prisoners, for example, for Lancaster Castle. There's quite a high-profile project at the moment called the Isaac Kitchen Project, which is sort of a support project for LGBT communities and a volunteer project. But the name Isaac Hitchen is taken from a group of gay men who were arrested in the early part of the 19th century, and in about, I think it was 1818, they were in the calendars of prisoners, and they were executed for being homosexual. So that's certainly one of the earliest records we have, and it's one of the quite high profile ones. But just recently, we've been supporting a project called Hidden Histories in Burnley, and it's to do with sort of uncovering the hidden histories of LGBT communities in Burnley, which is HLF funded, and a lovely man called Paul Fairweather is the project manager for that, and we've been supporting them. And just recently we've been looking at the records of the Burnley Borough Quarter Sessions and also the Burnley Borough Police, and we found quite a lot of incidences in the 1940s of men being arrested for what they called at the time gross indecency with another man. And this is an invaluable record, and in researching sort of LGBT or sort of gay history in Burnley, but unfortunately from the point of view of sort of prosecution and not, you know, a more positive
kind of
look,
celebrating
really.
history.
Yeah.
So that was in the 1940s, and again, information of men who were being charged then in those years and were appearing in court.
Yeah, and it's quite sad really, because for example there's one case of two young men.
I was going to ask about the outcomes.
And you know, you find different scenarios. I mean, in one case there was a young man who was 17 and an older man. The young man was prosecuted, the older man was let off. We don't know why, and you know, this is the thing, there's all these stories about these are real human beings and they have backstories, and if we could find out a bit more about them, that would be wonderful. There was one young couple, one was 22, one was 23. They'd been prosecuted for gross indecency with each other, and they've been told to not associate with each other, which is quite touching, because you think they'd been I think they've been arrested 2 times before as well, so they were obviously, you know, a couple, and you know, trying to.
And yet they'd had to face the kind of persecution.
Yeah, and also we don't know what gross indecency, as it was termed, actually referred to. Were they holding hands? Were they found kissing? You know, it's that sort of thing as well that we don't know. And we also thought it might be an idea to sort of get a map of Burnley, because through the project that Paul's been running, there are significant sites in Burnley, and he does a heritage trail, and on the website you can follow this heritage trail of things that have happened in Burnley. And it'd be interesting to see if you plotted these incidents, because you can find out where they were arrested, where that relates to other places in Burnley, like the Thorn Hotel, which was a place where people could go. Right.
And have we also got anything in the archives? I mean, was it in the 1960s, I think, that homosexuality was made legal in this country?
Yeah, I think it was 1967.
Do we have kind of anything in the archives that relate to that period of time and the response of the general public, or any of the stories that came out around then?
We don't really, although I'm sure there will be things within committee minutes and things, related organisations, and you could delve and you could probably find something. The Burnley Borough records do go up to the 1960s, and we haven't yet got that far in looking at them, but I'm sure it'd be interesting to see, you know, the difference in how you know, things changed over that period. And
just out of interest, because I know whenever you and I meet, I just find it fascinating, the things we discuss, and I'm sure our listeners do. Yes, they do. They're telling me that right now. So, just changing the subject a little. I mean, we've had some, not necessarily to do with LGBT, but we've had some very high-profile cases in Preston over recent years. Do they then go into the archives?
It depends what court that these things have taken place. We would have put the sort of magistrates' court records, but we wouldn't necessarily hold the records of Crown Court, for example. But certainly, sort of magistrates' court records, we do have them. They are, by law, closed for 30 years, court records. So anything after that, though, you would be able to come in and have a look at.
All right. That's quite interesting. So, when it comes to LGBT History Month, again, just remind us, Vicci, what is it that you're hoping that maybe somebody listening has information, or who knows in history, or maybe somebody within the family that something happened to? What is it that you're looking for, that you'd like to help to put the history together within the archives?
It's really any records relating to as you say, LGBT history. So it could be personal records, it could be records of an organisation, and anything like that, really. That that will help create a better picture, a fuller picture of Lancashire throughout history.
And as you say, quite a bit of information at the moment feeding through from Burnley. And
yes, yeah.
Any of the other areas that you're getting information through at the moment?
Not really, but what's great about Paul's project is that it'd be wonderful if you could replicate that. You could do that really in any of
what I was wondering.
the other towns. I know Lancaster has a really vibrant LGBT history, and I'm sure Preston does as well.
Yeah.
And the thing with these communities, because we know about Manchester has a really big LGBT centre in history. We know this in Liverpool as well, and there have been projects that have been done there. And they're the sort of larger urban centres. But what Paul's been doing looking at Burnley is it's a smaller town, it's in the east of Lancashire, and it really is a hidden history because they don't have that sort of big, vibrant community that stood alone. So that, it's really been interesting finding out about it.
So when you get the information that you can to put together, will it then remain within the archives, or would there be, first of all, a kind of public display initially about the information to go along maybe with the History Month or later in the year? Well,
as far as the Burnley project's concerned, there is going to be a sort of pamphlet that will be released very soon. There's going to be a sort of a celebration as part of LGBT History Month on the 15th of February, and that's going to be held at Townley Hall. I can't just quite remember the dates,
right.
But I'm sure we can find them for you. And that's basically, there's going to be a speaker who, one of the things Paul uncovered through his research is that there was a big meeting at Burnley Library in 1971, and they wanted to open a gay club in Burnley. And there was a lot of local opposition to this, and there was this big meeting that was pulled together, and you had a Catholic priest there, you had representatives from the gay community, you also had one of the newspaper articles about it, there's quite a nice bit about some of these bother boys turned up and they were told to leave their boots at the door and umbrellas, there's a lovely photograph of the meeting of all these ladies looking like Mary Whitehouse with these horn-rimmed glasses and sort of very stern looks on their faces. But one very moving thing that came out of that was an elderly lady sort of stood up as part of the meeting and basically said, I think this club would be wonderful because if this club had been there for my son, he would still be alive today. And, obviously he'd killed himself at some point. And then there was also another moving moment where people were asked to stand up if they were gay, and they all stood up together, and Paul said that this is probably sort of post-legalisation in 1967.
Wow.
It was probably one of the first recorded incidences of gay men actually standing up together in solidarity.
Wow.
So it's a really important meeting, and one of the people who was there, a chap called Mike Steed, is going to be at this event on the 15th of February to actually talk about what happened in 71.
And it's the 15th of February and it's being held where?
That's at Townley Hall. At
Townley Hall.
Yeah.
And Townley Hall is Burnley, is it?
It is, yes. Yeah, it's just outside Burnley.
Wow. So, Vicci, where can people find out more about the archives and any events that's taking place? Where's best for them to look?
Well, they can have a look on our website, and also through the libraries, what's on. If there are any events on, we're on there. So, for example, we've got an event for LGBT History Month as well, which is on the 1st of February.
Right.
And we're trialling a new thing called Eventbrite, where you can actually book online as well and get a ticket to come along. Through our website, through Lancashire County Council's website.
And if they go to Lancashire County Council and then have a look at Lancashire Archives, they can find information there. Yeah. Can I thank you for coming in this morning? Again, it's been most interesting, and I hope it's not too long before we meet again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed today's interview, why not tweet Hughie at Chat City PFM.